Hello from me, Lazarus. We continue with the next lesson of the course by HTML. We are currently on Chapter 8. HTML elements related to formatting of the text. This is the third lesson of this chapter. We've come to this point, the basics formatting types and related elements with which they are realized. We will look at the main ones: types of text formatting and the corresponding elements, and for physical formatting, and for logical marking with which they are realized in practice. Although the logical markup elements in theory, they don't have a well-defined formatting, but in practice they have some. So, this point actually is as a summary of the previous topic. Because here we have simply chosen another approach, we present in parallel the two types of tags, for physical formatting and for logical marking. Here are all the tags, which we have already considered in the preceding subpoint on this chapter, but only here we have grouped them in pairs, because they have the same. Or at least a similar purpose. In-text citation elements is the next point. The first such element is block quote. It is a block element, which serves to set longer quotes, on more than one line. By default, browsers leave known indent all sides of text. Others may be nested within this element formatting elements. It has a site attribute that serves for setting the source URL. Here is an example, you can check it out good. Here in this example I quote the differences between this element in HTML 4.01 and HTML5. The next element is Q. This is a linear element, which serves to set the shorter quotes that are on one line. By default, browsers show its content in double quotes. It also has a site attribute, in which it has the same effect and URL destination. So, the fourth point of this chapter is elements containers. These are span and div. In HTML, there are two more special ones: the elements that serve only as containers, and others are placed in them elements and they actually separate sections. But with span this is built-in section because it is a linear element, and with div it is structural section, which is involved in the layout of the structure of the web page itself, because it is a block element. I decided to include these items in this chapter because both are related to the text. As the span is entirely related to the text, because only text can be placed in it, while with div except text in it other elements can be placed. Element span, as I already mentioned, he is regular or line element to be placed usually in a paragraph and is a text container. In its content is placed a text that later formatted using CSS, that is, there is no clearly expressed meaning, except to single out a part of the text which we wish to format differently way from the other elements. Here is an example of its use. For example, here we solve the word to shape it effectively in red color and size. (1.5 times the font size), and here's what we'll see in the browser. Div element. As already mentioned, the div element is a block element and is a container in which place different elements. Usually these are elements which are interconnected in this way as well. They are separated into a separate section in the web page, which allows using the CSS to be formatted and positioned. That is, we can already summarize. The div element has the following basic functions. On a container in which they are placed interconnected elements. Separates a separate block section in web pages. Enables common formatting the items in this section, enables to position this one section or this block. The element, just as the paragraph, has an align attribute, which works the same way and with the same syntax and values. We recall the syntax. Here is an example. Look at it and read it carefully in the PDF file. Pay more attention to it. Since div is one of the most important elements for the overall layout of the web page, we will look at a few examples of its use. Here is an example showing them. The first two functions serves as a container, in which interconnected elements are placed, singles out a separate section or block in the web page. In the following example, let's create two more elements div and we will color them in different color. Here they are, and the result will be, here the similarity is clearly visible between the div and the paragraph, because both are block elements, but that is why we will talk in the next point in this chapter. But unlike paragraphs, div elements can invest in each other an unlimited number of levels inward. The next example that we'll consider, it will be more complicated. In it we will show how to make a layout per page via CSS. Of course, now we're going to do one of the classic and not very complicated ones, layouts to view divs and CSS in action, and we will look at it in detail, the layout of web pages, in the CSS chapters. So let's get started. First you show what I want to get, and then I will explain this and how to realize it in practice. So, first, we'll use common 5 div elements as the initial code is as follows. I set ID to each div and what I want to happen is the following arrangement of these items. I won't explain it now step by step how to do. We will have such a lesson in the Layout tab of sections in CSS. Now I will briefly explain and give the final code of this result. Here is the explanation. Such setting of style is basically se do with an external CSS file, as on each div element an ID attribute is set to be able to be identified and applied to him specific layout. But now and about the examples, we will use a linear style for setting inline style English, through the style attribute. For each of the div elements color and size must be set, as in this case. I will set the dimensions in percentages. I will only set the width to the menu and the main content, and on the rest it defaults to 100%. Menu height and main content will be the same. To reset the automatic indents, we should use inline style, in the head, between style tags, and there we will write the following: this code resets all external and internal clearances. As an example of these slips, I'll show what the blocks look like first just colored, before to add the indentation reset, like this. Here are the results after add the offset reset, set height of HTML and body. To realize the height, which is set in elements in percentages, their parent element must to have a set height. So I set height and width of the HTML and body elements. The code for this would be, and the total sum of the heights on all div elements must be equal to or less than 100%. I divide them into percentages like this, by complying with this condition. Here is the final code in the editor. With that we will finalize this lesson. We end here. Best regards.